We've got Wale Oluwo in the studios. He's former Commissioner for Energy and Mineral Resources. He joins us from Lagos. Good morning, Wale, and thank you for joining us today. But incidentally, your name was also mentioned as part of those who were written to and summoned by the Lagos State House of Assembly. What can you tell us about that first?
No, I've already, thank you, Chamberlain, for having me here today. I've already appeared before the State House of Assembly, and I've given them the information to the best of my knowledge.
So, about this summons, and you saw the advertorial, all that was highlighted and listed. Don't you think, are you suggesting, if you say you've given them the information to the best of your knowledge, are you suggesting that there's something much more to this than is out there in public domain?
Let me tell you my understanding of what is going on. And it's also important that the public should know this. Number one, there's an appropriation process, which is that there'll be a budget, the budget is taken to the House of Assembly, and it is approved. Now, was that done? Clearly, that was done, because I went to the Assembly to defend my own ministry's budget, and all my colleagues, they did the same. Now, what we are having problem with is the fact that having approved the budget, the Parliament now inserted a section in the budget that says the executive must come back to it and come and seek a second approval for what has already been appropriated. And we had serious issues with that, because if you look at the parliamentary process, the appropriation bill is a law, is what will become a law after the Parliament has appropriated and the governor has assented to the bill. Now, that bill should go through first reading, second reading, committee stage, maybe public hearing, and all that goes with it. And all of us were there to defend the figures as members of the executive. Having done that, I'm not sure, I'm not a lawyer, but what I know about parliamentary procedure, procurement procedure, and appropriation procedure is that Parliament will either approve or disapprove. Sometimes when they disapprove, you are allowed to come back and represent it by way of supplementary budget if you really want them to look at it a second time. But I don't think Parliament can look at a budget and say these items 1, 2, 3, 4 to 20, you cannot implement them until you come back to us for further approval. That is strange to law. That is strange to the appropriation process. And that is strange to the parliamentary procedure of making a law. And I'll tell you why I think this is very wrong. Because if you look at the judiciary, because you have 3 arms, if you look at the judiciary, you cannot have a judgment by the court, and the court will say, Mr. Governor, before you implement this judgment, you must come back to us. To come and do what? So you cannot pass a law twice. You pass a law once, and it is implemented. I think that is the bone of contention. And Chamberlain, let me also make this clear. In the first instance, this is coming for the 2018 appropriation procedure. We had 2016, we didn't have this problem. We had 2017, we didn't have this problem. This problem came up in 2018 when a particular individual became the chairman of the appropriation committee. I don't want to name names here, but clearly I'm concerned because it was when the individual became the chairman of the appropriation committee that we started having all sorts of problems with appropriation in this state. And it is still continuing in this new government. And I hope they can go to court so that we can strengthen this. Because at the end of the day, this goes to the very heart of the democracy that we are practicing. What are the powers of parliament with respect to appropriation? What can they appropriate? And can they tell the executive, don't execute this law that we have passed until you come back to us? That's the strange thing that I see here.
So are you suggesting that this is a witch hunt?
I don't want you to put words in my mouth, but I think is a political game. Look, let me put it this way. There is the appropriation process of it. There is the procurement process of it. There is a legal process of it. Mind you, the governor has already gone to court, and the principal officers and members of the committee of the assembly that are probing this issue, they are supposed to appear in court around 9 a.m. today. We hope they will go or make a representation. So as said, there is the appropriation process, there is the procurement part of it, there is the legal part of it, and then there is the politics of it. So what they are putting in the public space is the complete politics of it. A lot of our people in the public, they don't know what the issues are. The issue is constitutional. An appropriation has been done. Some monies were asked to be kept aside in some special account that's unknown to law. And then you say, don't do this project until you come back to the parliament. No executive will do that. Otherwise, you begin to undermine the principle of separation of powers if you accede to such requests. And it's strange. It started in 2018.
Okay, Mr. Oluwo.
Yes.
You said that there is a clause added into that law that said that the executive needed to go back to the state assembly before they could execute, before the governor could do some things.
Correct.
Did the governor contest that clause in the law, or did he sign it into law as is?
To the best of my knowledge, we made that complaint that this is strange to law, but you see, an appropriation document is a bill that is going to become law, and it contains a lot of things inside it. Some of them very important to the economy, some of them very important to the running of government. So you get to a point where you want to manage a stalemate in such a way that you may not agree with a section of what you have been asked to sign. You note it. That should not stop you from doing those things that you needed to do for the people. And then the challenge is put to the assembly. If they believe the executive has not done well by implementing those areas that they didn't believe
Wale,
was appropriate, they should have gone to court to contest it.
In just a moment. Please stay with us.
Thanks for staying with us. Mr. Oluwo, let's get back to this. If the governor, the former governor, had that clause in the law and he didn't contest it but signed it with the clause that, you said he asterisked, doesn't it make it compulsory for him to obey the law as is, so long as he has signed it into law?
You see, you don't throw the baby away with the bathwater. That is the way I would characterize that. What is important is that in the document, you add so many things. Maybe what is offensive is just like 1%, 2%, 3%, and that can create two possible areas of action. One, either the executive goes to court to challenge it, or the parliament goes to court to challenge it. Now, the parliament is in a position to go to court to challenge it because it boils down to the principles of separation of power. The fact that a parliament has made the law and that law is operating, you can even go to the judiciary and cite some sections of a law, and if they found it inconsistent with the constitution, it will be abrogated. So when you go to court, you don't go to court to say they should tear down an entire law. You disagree with some sections of it. So we are no longer in government. We cannot go to court again. We have passed that stage. But there's an executive there that has replaced us. They can take the matter to court. And if the parliament is so concerned that there has been a violation, then they should go to the third arm of government to go and seek redress so that this part of the law can be interpreted.
All right, just one more thing. From your understanding, in case you're speaking with anyone currently, do you think that that particular clause or that provision is still in operation for subsequent appropriations?
To the best of my knowledge, yes, because they introduced it in 2018. Now, the 2019 budget that was approved has the same thing. And I think it's only happening in Lagos, where Parliament passes an appropriation bill and is signed into law, and they say you cannot touch this expenditure 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 until you come back for a second approval. And that second approval is strained to law. I've never heard of it. Even at the federal level, I've not seen Minister Mechi or Minister Fashola go to the Senate, they approve the budget, and they say, come back before you execute. That's completely strange.
All right, Mr. Wale Oluwo, former Commissioner for Energy and Mineral Resources in Lagos. Thank you for joining us today on Sunrise Daily. So let's go ahead then and take a look at some of the comments that you have sent to us. We've got this first one coming through from Ijiaku, who is talking about what we started out with in the opening sequence about the regulation, the proposed or planned regulation on social media. What Ijiaku says, it's very ironic that a government that enjoyed the gains of unhindered access and use of social media during its quest for power now sees it as a threat. Yes, it's good to check fake news, but he that comes to equity must come with clean hands.
Well, this one is from Nasiru Fakai, who says, as much as people have freedom of speech, we must also be careful on allowing people to be spreading lies. Fake news, hate speeches are destructive, and people now spread them intentionally to cause harm on the nation and others.
And this one is about the NIMC. It says the NIMC._.ng has failed in its mandate to provide ID cards. I applied since 2014 till date. I'm yet to get it. I'm not alone in this complaint. 5-6 years later. Imagine the frustration of someone who has no other means of ID card. The army should set its priorities right. I think the NIMC really needs to come out and educate people, because one of the things I also hear is that the card is not as important as the slip.
No, well, if you have the NIN is different from the card. They say the NIN is that number.
But
it's on the
National
slip.
identity number.
Even to get the NIN
slip itself.
is a major challenge. It's a major challenge. I think the NIMC needs to be speaking up. So does the Nigerian army, because you cannot in one breath, on their same Twitter handle, be saying that something is fake, this positive identification thing is fake. Meanwhile, sometime in September, you had a thread of tweets talking about this particular operation. I think that the silence is enough. The Nigerian army really needs to speak up.
So there you go. That is the show today. We're hoping that will happen sooner rather than later. Thank you for watching. I'm Chamberlain Uso.
Thank you. I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf.
Namayo Makine. Have a wonderful day.